Intellectual property from trade secret, copyright, brands, model rights, drawing rights, databases, and patents are drivers of economic growth. They enable commercialization and development of enterprises that can facilitate job creation and catalyze industrialization, supported by effective research and development. Nigeria, which is Africa's largest economy, is unfortunately home to a weak intellectual property protection regime, which is hampering its economic growth, and this calls for a rethinking of the model. On the 3rd of April 2018, the Islamic Development Bank announced a new partnership with the World Intellectual Property Organization to protect and support the next generation of entrepreneurs who are developing science, technology, and innovation-led solutions to the Sustainable Development Goals. It is on this backdrop that this edition of the Islamic Finance Weekly we discuss the topic Islamic Intellectual Property, Opportunities for Nigerian Economy with Dr. Abdullahi Ishola, lecturer at the Department of Islamic Law, Kwara State University. The focus is to discuss an integrated approach to intellectual property rights from the Islamic finance sector in relation to infrastructure, regulation, and Sharia compliance. Dr. Abdullahi joins us from Kwara State. Good morning, Dr. Abdullahi. It is good to have you on the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Let's start with the basics. What is intellectual property, and how does Islamic intellectual property differ from the conventional version?
Thank you very much. Intellectual property is a generic term which mostly is always mistaken as if it's a sister term for copyright, whereas copyright itself is a subset of intellectual property. So intellectual property simply means a product of the mind, a creative production, whatever that is produced from the intellect, that you undergo some kind of intellectual exercise to produce it, which is a form of intangible product. So that is what intellectual property generally means. But we need to understand this by understanding what is called intellectual property rights, because intellectual property rights is actually what our professionals are usually focused on, because there is no value for a product of the intellect which does not enjoy rights. So the means by which such product enjoy rights is what is called intellectual property right. And this one refers to the legal protection accorded to such intellectual products through the law. And this will depend on the nature of and the evidence of such a production. For instance, if we have a book now or an inscription on a piece of paper, it's going to be an evidence of a creative writing. So by the time we have a book, then it means somebody has made an intellectual production. But what is evidencing that production is the book. So the fact that the book is the evidence of that product will now determine what IP right will be accorded to it. And that is why we have such IP rights as copyright, trademark, industrial design, trade secret, patent, and so on and so forth. And on the part of Islamic intellectual property, we will understand the concept of intellectual property from Islamic law perspective by understanding the concept of property itself. Because jurists do not talk of intellectual property as a separate concept, but it is under the concept of property itself, which is called al-mal, that we are able to understand the position of Islamic law on intellectual property. For instance, the Hanafi school does not conceive property other than something that is tangible. So to the Hanafi school, they don't agree that there should be something that will be regarded as intellectual property. whereas the majority of the juries, which consist of the Shafi'i, the Ambali, the Maliki, they believe that a property can be both tangible and intangible. And it is on this note that we are able to understand that there is a recognition for intellectual property in Islamic law. And they conceive it as a form of intangible property, which is called al-manfa'a. So when we look at this, we understand that Islamic intellectual property simply means any product of the minds and creativity, which Islamic law, that is Shari'ah, will accord protection through conferment of enforceable rights on them, and which are recognized as properties and can be possessed and owned, while its owner can do with it what any other property owner can do with its property, such as sales, transfer, gift, endowment, inheritance, and so on and so forth. When we talk of the differences between the general intellectual property and Islamic intellectual property, we understand that unlike the non-Islamic intellectual property, Islamic intellectual property does not protect any product of the mind, which means there are some products that will be accorded IP recognition under the general law, while under Islamic law, they will not be recognized because there are some laid down principles that must be satisfied. And these are the requisites for Islamic IP. So this IP, the requisites include: one, compliance with acceptable innovation in Islam. Because in Islamic law, innovation, which is essentially what the intellectual product is all about, is divided into two. Generally, innovation is called bid'ah, but bid'ah is divided into two. We have what is called bid'atu diniyya and bid'atu dunyawiyya. That is bid'atu diniyya, religious innovation, and bid'atu dunyawiyya, that is a worldly innovation. What that means is that if any creativity will affect the laid down standard that relates to religion, it is not going to be accorded any protection under Islamic law. Then we have the...
All right,
Sorry?
Dr. Abdullahi, I must tell you that your intellectualism on intellectual property and how it differs from the conventional part is second to none. Thank you very much for taking us through intellectual property and from an Islamic perspective. Now, let's look at investing in licensed trade secrets and IPs often require sufficient knowledge about the assets. What level of awareness is required for an intellectual property? And does this mean all relevant information will be disclosed? And what legal protections are there for the IP owner?
Thank you very much. When we look at the aspect of trade secret, especially from the Nigerian law perspective, we have a lot of legal challenges because there's no specific law in Nigeria on trade secret. So we need to just explore some other legal framework which are not specifically focused on trade skilling as secret. We have seen that the trade secret has been protected in Nigeria through the judicial approach. So much that the court is, however, much more leaning towards the employer. So what that means is that in many cases involving the employer and former employee, the court has mostly given a kind of protection to the employer, especially where the restriction is not so it does not have effect on taking up another job, but the effect is just that the former employee should not disclose whatever that has been gathered from the former employment. And when this is breached, the court is always very ready to award the damages for the breach. Then also, we have the challenges of the constitutional provision, where the Constitution provides that all civil proceedings should be in public. What that means is that even if there is kind of a trade secret between the litigant, by the time it goes into the court arena, it's going to become of a public. So these are some of the challenges that we have as far as a trade secret is concerned in Nigeria. But essentially, the law requires that when the parties, the employer and the employee, are going into the contract of employment, they should be specific on what exactly are the terms regulating the trade secret that may come the way of the employee in the course of his employment. So if any trade secret is developed, like a business plan during the employment, the terms between the parties will determine who is going to claim the ownership. But essentially, if that trade secret is developed in the normal course of employment engagement, then it belongs, the benefit and the ownership belongs to the employer. So this is just what we have in Nigeria so far for now.
Okay, all right. Thank you for taking us through the IP and investment license trade secret. And globally, we've seen the ISDB establish intellectual property initiative, while the investing public seems to be embracing Islamic IP. However, many Nigerians still don't understand how it works. Can you provide us with some insight into its operations?
Okay, thank you very much. I think there will be need for us in Nigeria to begin to study and look very critically at this very good initiative of the ISDB, that is Islamic Development Bank on IP. So what they have done, as we may be aware, is that in 2018, they went into a kind of partnership with WIPO, that is what the Intellectual Property Organization. And the ISDB made a kind of a fund available, which they call a transform fund, in the sum of $500 million. And what they try to do here is to make it appealing to those that may want to access the fund, that it is not going to be a matter of financing their goods and services this time around, but they should be the one to develop and come up with the ideas, which is a kind of a creativity, which they want to develop and promote as a form of a business, and for them to now be able to access the fund. And to make this so a kind of a neutral, so they now created a platform which they call a kind of engage, that those who have some kind of creativity, they will go into that website and they try to link up with those that may be interested in what they have produced. And if there is a need for fund, then they will access the fund. So when we look at this initiative, we are going to see that a lot for Islamic finance sectors in Nigeria to learn from. And through this, we can understand that Islamic intellectual property is not just a theoretical, a theoretical concept, but something that can be practical. And this is what ISDB have tried to demonstrate to the whole world.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdullahi, for your explanation, and that was very insightful. Let's talk about unlike other assets, intellectual properties, being intangibles, can only be valued subjectively. And is there a structured method to price discovery?
The straightforward answer is that there's no structured price discovery for IP anywhere all over the world, because IP is only made appealing through legal protection. The essence of the value of the IP is to make it attractive for those who are the intellectual producer of such products. And this is done through the legal protection. So for the Islamic finance industries in Nigeria, we need to begin to understand that IP outlet, if seriously invested into, most likely produce an impressive return. But it requires a lot of packaging and public presentation as well as marketing, which are fundamental in attracting good price to an IP product. Demands and need for the benefit to derive is also a factor to influence the price. So if you make something that people need, if you make it available through your intellectual product, definitely it's going to attract a very good price. But there is no benchmark for price discovery for IP, but that should not be a discouragement for interested investors.
Okay, from what you talk about that there is no structural price for IP discoveries, I must tell you that protecting the IP of new innovations is a vital factor for creating an enabling environment for coding, programming, and software development. What do you think Islamic intellectual property would play in helping to attract foreign direct investment for Nigeria?
Islamic IP has clear requisites as earlier mentioned. So for that reason, those who want to invest in it will know that they are going into something that is very straightforward, that they can know the limits, their limitations in such an investment. And they will also be clear with the risk that may be involved. And for that reason alone, I believe that foreign direct investment will be most likely attracted. Then also, Islamic IP is transparent. Like I've said, it's not a theoretical thing. It's something that we focus on target, objectives. This is as regard the kind of Shari'ah, that is the objective of Islamic law. Because there will be certain objectives which will be aimed at achieving when we employ the Islamic IP. And we have a very good example in the ISDB WIPO model, which can also be explored by Islamic finance sector in Nigeria by going into partnership with IP regulatory institutions in the Nigeria, like the Nigerian Copyright Commission, Registrar of Trademark. So essentially, when we look at all this, and our Islamic finance explore this, and even all these regulatory bodies, they are going to see that there will be a lot to be attracted to the country. Then more importantly is that we should begin to think of floating commercialized Islamic IP. So the Halal Certification is a form of a global commercialized of Islamic intellectual property. But our Islamic finance sector should think beyond this as a sector alone. In other parts of the country, of the world, they have also explored Islamic Finance Research Institute as a form of a way of commercializing Islamic intellectual property, by which they produce relevant materials for global use. So this should also be an area to be looked into in Nigeria.
All right, Dr. We talk about the IOFI standard Shari'ah as the IP owner, and you know that IOFI, they are the standard organization for the Islamic finance sectors in the world as at now. So, but when we look at the contribution of non-interest finance to the country GDP, it is currently about 5.0%. Today, Nigeria marks its 61st Independence Day. As an Islamic finance enthusiast who believe this non-interest market can reduce the financial inclusion gap and bridge infrastructure deficits, how will you describe the contribution of Islamic finance to Nigeria's economy so far? And what are the other areas that it can support to create more economic opportunities?
We should not look at the years of independence of Nigeria, but we should rather look at how long has Islamic finance sector been introduced into the country. So when we look at it from this perspective, we will see that the sector is not doing bad. It's just that there's still room for a lot of improvement. And that is the reason why the Nigerian environment itself has to give much more opportunities to the Islamic finance sector to actualize its potential. The growth of Islamic finance in any country will depend on the environmental as well as governance sector, not only just the sector itself cannot grow itself. So the environment has to be very friendly with it. And that is why, from the legal perspective, we have been also advocating that it will not be a bad approach if Nigeria can also have specific laws dedicated to Islamic finance, like they have in Malaysia, so that it will not just be a matter of the CBN directive, the CBNDs and regulations that will be exploring in advancing the sector. So far, if you are to look at it from that perspective, we will say the sector is not doing bad, but of course there is room for improvement. And we can also see the kind of a testimony from the recent award won by the JAIS at the global level, where it was awarded the most improved bank all over the world. So this is a testimony that the sector is not doing bad, but the Nigerian environment will determine how much better the sector is going to impact on the country.
Like there is room for potential for the growth of Islamic finance in Nigeria.
Yes, there is.
We'll go on a short break and we'll be right back.
Islamic finance has been misunderstood by many to be a religious product aimed at only Muslims. But that is not the case. Since the 2008 global financial crisis, Islamic finance has become an attractive segment of the financial market, promoting sustainable development and economic empowerment. Join me every Friday on the Islamic Finance Weekly at 11 a.m. West African time as we discuss Connect the Globe on Islamic finance and its benefits. It features experts, scholars, analysts, policymakers and regulators who provide insight on the capital market, banking, personal finance, Islamic insurance, financial literacy, waqf, halal, and all other aspects of finance and the economy. You don't want to miss it.
Welcome back. So, Dr. Abdullahi, as we wrap up the conversation, what do you think the Nigerian Islamic investor and investee community need to do to fully maximize the value of IP and to drive profitability and corporate growth?
Yes, the first thing is there is need for the customer's mentality about what Islamic finance itself connotes to be better placed. Because up to now, especially perhaps from the Muslims customer, they still believe that Jaiz banks and all others, they are just a kind of a charitable institution. I think there is need for members of the society to be better oriented that Islamic finance sector is not a charitable organization. Rather, it's a commercial outlet, and as such, if approached from that perspective, so it's going to be bring a better results for both the investors and the investees. Then secondly, there is also the need for focus to be shifted from product development as mere application within the each sector. For instance, every bank, every Islamic finance sector has the opportunity to develop their products. But beyond that, we may begin to think of how we are going to be developing Islamic finance products that can be commercialized, which can be sold even to other sister institutions. So that is also one of the ways by which both investors and investees can have value for their investment. Then there is also the need, like I said earlier, to invest in intellectual production sector. What I mean by this is in the areas of research in Islamic finance, we should also see that as an area where the investment of an Islamic fund will be put into, not just focusing on the financing and all other sectors like a sukuk. We should also look towards how we are going to maximize the opportunity available in the Islamic financial intellectual production. So that area, for instance, in Malaysia, ISRA and INSIP are very popular institutions. And I believe they are making a lot of impact globally, and not only imparting knowledge, but I believe they must also be making some kind of a return for those who have invested into the sector. Then we also need to a kind of commercializing the trade secret. Even though the popular belief is that you keep your trade secret, but to me, there are certain trade secrets might have been used to the benefit of those who developed them. So instead of keeping it or reducing them over and over again to the extent they have become so useless, so to say, by the time you see that you have benefited from such trade secret, so you can look for a way of commercializing it. I give an example. The Jais recently won the Giver Award, by which it was awarded as the most improved bank. I believe they have some kind of trade secret that placed them in that position. Now, next year, they may be open to also win such award, but I believe there will come a time that they will be targeting some other award to be won. So for that reason, whatever they have done that hand them that award, which is a form of a trade secret, instead of keeping it, they can see the way of even making it available as a kind of asset to be sold to other banks who also, may also aspire to win such an award. And finally, there is need for a kind of legal reform, and I will also appeal to all the Islamic finance regulatory bodies in Nigeria, like a CBN, NICOM, and SEC, and even PENCOM, that they should also develop a kind of IP policy for Islamic finance sector, like ISDB has done together with the WIPO. So there's need for CBN to partner with all the IP regulatory bodies in Nigeria, so that they can come up with a kind of IP policy which can also benefit all the Islamic finance sectors in the country. And I believe with this, we are going to have better impact from the Islamic finance sector in the country.
Definitely, Dr. Abdullahi. We do hope that the regulators in the non-interest finance market in Nigeria, and even the Federal Ministry of Science and Technology in the country, will embrace Islamic intellectual property system in order to drive real change for millions of people by giving every scientist, technologist, and innovator the opportunity to make a difference in the country. Thank you so much, Dr. Abdullahi Ishola, lecturer at the Department of Islamic Law, Kwara State University. Enjoy your weekend. Infringement of IP rights also has negative implications on the overall economy, as it obstructs genuine investment by both domestic and foreign investors, hinders job creation, and causes loss of tax revenues to the government. Socially, widespread IP violations corrupt the cultural values and batter the national image of country. Despite the various efforts made by strengthening IP rights and protection in Nigeria, challenges remain. The federal government of Nigeria has renewed its commitment to intellectual property development, and it is important to also create the enabling environment for Islamic intellectual property to thrive. And that will be all for today's session. Visit our website www.proshareng.com for more updates on the Islamic Finance Weekly News and videos. Here is wishing all Nigerians a happy 61st Independence Day. Until next week, Friday, stay safe, stay good.